Sunshine is going to start us giving us a few hints. So I guess, Sunshine, let's start.
Let's do it. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Basically, you all know by now I'm Sunshine Ludi, and this storytelling event is being recorded. After I edit and upload it to YouTube, I will send the YouTube link to all of the people who have been invited. So even people who didn't make it can click on the link and watch this story. Now, the best way to make our storytelling time a really good experience is for everyone to mute themselves while the speaker is speaking, okay? Because what happens is something like maybe a dog barks or something else happens in the background. And so if we only have one person on when the story is going on, it makes it much nicer. Also, you have a choice of whether to watch your screen in gallery mode or speaker mode. If you have it in speaker mode, then you're actually going to see the speaker close up and personal. Okay? Speakers, please remember to turn yourself back on when you start your story. And finally, if you're on a computer and you want to temporarily unmute yourself to make a comment, you can do so by pressing the space bar and holding it. Now, I don't know how that works on a phone or anything else, but it does work on a computer. Okay, I'm ready to get to storytelling, are you?
This is our 8th storytelling in September. Our theme, although not required, is coronavirus. We're also in the process of publishing our 6 village stories. So we've been quite busy. I founded this in 2013, and so I'm the president and founder of the Village Publishing Club, and also the MC of this storytelling. First time, actually. Our first storyteller, or rather poet, is Nancy Brown. She's in the process of publishing Nanny's book. Her acrostic poem is appropriately titled Coronavirus. It was originally written April 2020, and she dedicated it to her grandson, Adam, who was a senior and ASB president at Eastlake High School in Sammamish, Washington. Adam began his freshman year, this year, 2020, at Arizona State University. So have a great year, Adam, and here's Nancy.
Hello, everyone. This is an acrostic poem, as Peggy said. And for those of you that don't know what an acrostic poem is, it is a word where the first letter of each sentence begins with that letter. So you'll get it as I go through. The word is coronavirus. C is for cheated out of your senior year. O is for others you hold dear. R is for reaching goals that appear. O is for opportunities that kicked into gear. N is for never losing hope for a new frontier. A is for always remembering to persevere. V is for victory at the end of the school year. I is for insight to serve and volunteer. R is for resisting the urge to live in fear. U is for understanding and encouraging your peers. S is for sustaining your faith and always holding it near. Best of luck, Adam. Thank you.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
How can we applaud?
You can applaud this way, yeah. So he's experimenting. Is he still at Arizona State, Nancy?
Yes.
Is it open?
Yes, yes. He is a sustainability major. I had no idea what that meant, but I believe it has something to do with working to improve and maintain the environment.
Oh, fantastic.
Many of his classes are online, but there's a small group in this major that does get together for in-person classes, for
Wow.
just 2 of them, I think.
So, wow. My granddaughter is doing the same thing, but at New York University, environmental studies. That's great.
Yeah,
Our next speaker is Dennis Glauber. He's our Walter Cronkite, and you'll see why. Dennis Glauber has been with us since our founding, and we have had the pleasure of listening to his fine chisel stories since then. He and his wife, Yvette, have resided in the village since 2013, after residing in Seattle since 1980. He has published his stories in Our Village Stories since its founding. And you'll notice the voice still has that smooth South African accent. Dennis?
Thank you, Peggy, and glad to see everybody, glad to hear your stories. This is called Shots in the Dark. And as I speak these lines in September of 2020, the whole world has been engaged in a once-in-a-century crisis, the battle of the V's. On the one side, the virus, vicious and villainous, and on the other, the not yet viable, but valiant and victorious Deo Volente vaccine to be. Not surprisingly, my thoughts have gone back to a previous time when the world grappled with and conquered a dread disease. My very, very peripheral association with Jonas Salk and the poliomyelitis vaccine is the topic of this tale. Johannesburg, the largest city in South Africa, is where I grew up and went to medical school. About an hour's drive away lies the town of Vereeniging on the banks of the Vaal River. This was the historic place where the peace conference ending the Anglo-Boer War of 1899 to 1902 took place. We used to joke that the only redeeming virtue of living in Vereeniging was that it was only an hour away from Johannesburg. In the period immediately following World War II, a new town sprang up some 10 miles downriver from Vereeniging, a steel manufacturing city called Vanderbijl Park. It was there that I set up medical practice in April 1952. The in-joke was extended so that when asked how I could banish myself to such a cultural wilderness, I could reply with tongue-in-cheek, after all, it's only 15 minutes from Vereeniging. No sooner had my pregnant wife and I ensconced ourselves in the local hotel and begun establishing a practice and a search for permanent housing when a stroke of rare good fortune came my way. My first contact with Americans en masse. This was the arrival of the first few of what soon became dozens of many young families from the USA. They were engineers from the M.W. Kellogg Company of Idaho, here to establish the world's first plant for the extraction of oil from coal. South Africa is cursed by a dearth of oil reserves and blessed by an abundance of coal, much of it in incredibly rich seams just on the other side of the river opposite Vanderbijl Park. So that was to be the site of a new entity called Sasol, S-A-S-O-L, and a new city, Sasolburg. And it was my good fortune that the first question the young American mothers had for the hotel management was the whereabouts of the nearest medical practitioner. The answer, obviously, we have young Dr. Glauber right here in the hotel. There was no bridge over the river at the early stages. Transport of all dimensions was achieved, believe it or not, by a pontoon ferry operated by a pulley system powered by donkeys. All this rapidly changed as the huge new plant and city grew and sprawled across the countryside. Now, the in-joke was further extended, and with a very straight face, we consoled the prospective residents of Sasolburg that after all, they were only 20 minutes away from Vanderbijl Park. My American practice grew apace. Babies were delivered, firm friendships were made, remote places that I'd never heard of, like Casper, Wyoming, Allentown, Pennsylvania, Waco, Texas, they became real and familiar as though I had been there personally. And then came the miracle of the Salk vaccine. Jonas Salk and his Pittsburgh team had worked for many years on developing a safe and effective vaccine, funded in large part by the March of Dimes, a grassroots nationwide movement inspired and led by the most famous of all polio victims, the late President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Fittingly, the triumphant announcement of the vaccine came on April the 12th, 1955, 10 years to the day after FDR's death. I should mention that during the severe polio epidemics of 1952 and 1953, prior to the existence of a vaccine, we sometimes used a stopgap preparation called gamma globulin. This had no specific relation to the three types of poliovirus, and at best might have given passive immunity lasting barely 5 or 6 weeks. Its main benefit would have been in allaying the fears of panicky parents. Perhaps I need to remind younger listeners that such panic and terror, summer after summer, was widespread and fully justified. Such was the devastation caused by poliomyelitis. When the Salk vaccine was released in the USA, it was also licensed for production in research centers around the world, and the Poliomyelitis Research Foundation of the South African Institute for Medical Research was thus authorized to mass produce the vaccine strictly according to the Salk protocol, and supplies became freely available. One day, several of my American patients/friends approached me as a group with the news that they had ordered and arranged the delivery of Salk vaccine to be flown out from the USA specifically for their use. Their understanding, which was a completely erroneous one, was that the South African vaccine was to be restricted only to South African citizens. In retrospect, I think that they felt that the local product would be inferior to the real thing from the USA, and they contrived a tactful way to get around this potentially embarrassing quandary. Came the big day when the consignment was due to arrive, and I was invited to accompany my friends to take delivery at the airport, some 50 miles away. Once back in my office, I opened the precious carton to find vial after vial, bottle after bottle of gamma globulin. I gently chided my friends for venturing out of their own fields of expertise into the dark and spending a fortune on a product of which they knew all too little. The upshot was that they and their families, like the rest of us, had their shots the South African way with total success. And I was stuck with a refrigerator loaded with expensive gamma globulin, awaiting suitable indications for its use. And from this distance of 65 years, I'm afraid I don't recall which came first, the expiry date of the product or my wife's ultimatum to get that stuff out of her fridge or else. Thank you.
Dennis, it was lovely.
Great story. Great story.
Okay.
Good story. Good story. Very appropriate for nowadays. So our next storyteller is the very famous Sunshine Ludi. Without Sunshine, there would probably be no storytelling. She's our Zoom and KDP techie. She is also probably our village's #1 entertainer and fun and charity fundraiser. On top of all that, she's a musician and author, and she's about to publish her 4th book. And here are 2 of them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. And first she'll start with a song, which is Party With Me during COVID-19. And then she'll tell a story, Christmas long ago. So you go, Sunshine.
Thank you so much, Peggy. There's a little history on this song. I belong to a group called the Village String Band, and they were going with themes. Every week they would be singing about a particular thing. They picked the word party. And somehow or other, my brain said, you know what? I'm going to write my own song. And I did, and here it is. Would you like to be at a party with me? Well, we will have to Zoom. Don't you want to be at a party with me? No drinks, no food, no room. I'd like to be at a party with you and maybe sing a tune. If you want to be at a party with me, well, we will have to Zoom. Here you are, at a party with me. Well, come on, sing a song. Yes, you came to be at a party with me, but none can sing along. So while we're here, we'll mute ourselves and listen to one voice. If you want to sing at a party with me, well, that's our only choice. Let's Zoom! Thank you. Okay, now on to my little story. There's 3 parts to this poem. The first kind of gives a little bit of history that helps to explain the poem. And then there's the poem itself about the Christmas, and then there's a postscript. So, about this poem. I imagine my parents saw me as a very great trial. For me, they were a major pain, but now I can look back with a smile. It wasn't easy being them. It wasn't easy being me. In later years, we came together. The rest is history. I left home in '61 with high school diploma in hand. with children at 10 and 11 in 1976, I began to understand. All they ever wanted was their children's safety. While their rules were most extreme, I finally knew they loved completely. And here's the poem. It was a Christmas poem confession to my mother and dad that I wrote 25 years after I left home in 1986. So this is written to them. When we were hiding Christmas gifts this year, I remembered a Christmas long ago. Although it's not something you might remember, my parents, this true story I want you to know. One day I needed something out of reach. Today I don't remember why. In the basement, in front of my daddy's workbench, I climbed up on some boxes to reach up high. The boxes tumbled down, and so did I. I got up and tried to fix the disarray. But there they were, those precious roller skates. Imagine my thrilled surprise and my dismay. There was no doubt in what I had to do. I did the best to correct the damage done, but Mother or Daddy might have seen a clue. I tried to be convincing to everyone. Came Christmas and time for the special surprise, a happy gift. But with my guilt, I felt they knew. I wished I could tell them I wasn't snooping. I wished I could tell them what was really true. And so, in this poem, I did. Postscript. I finally understood their love. We enjoyed weekly calls until I lost them both. Today, I miss them still. Thank you. Thank you.
Next, very nice, Sunshine, as always. Next is Daya Shankar, and we were talking to her earlier. Daya comes to us from India. She is a resident of the Wellington and our resource for living through the coronavirus in a retirement home. She has been published by the Globe and Our Village Stories, as well as stories for journals and activity books for classrooms. She's a professor emeritus. She holds an MA and a PhD in philosophy and global communications from Ohio University. And the title of her piece is Living Through COVID-19, Sailing My Ship Through the Storm in the Sea. So Daya, come forward.
Okay, and the name of my story is Living Through the COVID-19, Sailing My Ship Through the Storm. This was the month is February and the year is 2020. My friends and I were looking forward to a beautiful spring time in Southern California, the best time of the year. Everything was turning green, the flowers were blooming, and the birds were singing, and there was this refreshing breeze in the air. I turned on the TV to watch the news, and the news was about the coronavirus, informing us that it is highly contagious. There are many people who died in Seattle, Washington. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Okay, I just want to be sure. Okay. The news sounded pretty strange to me, but I was not shocked or something, but I wanted to know more about it. And the news from nursing home was heartbreaking, especially when the doctor said, oh, if you have asthma or pre-existing condition like high blood pressure or diabetes, you are particularly susceptible to this virus. Have I lost again? I don't know what happens.
You're on. You're on.
I don't know, it gets black sometimes. As I was listening to the news, my children called, and it was very nice because I always enjoyed whenever they call. The members of the management team at the Wellington imposed so many rules and in order to prevent the infection, that the mask, the social distance, the no visitation, no outing, complete isolation, and each one of us at the Wellington are supposed to hunker down in our own apartment. So often I wonder and I fear if I would be able to see my children if I go to hospital because of this coronavirus. Oh, that will be so devastating, so sad for me and for my children. In this turbulent time and environment, I do find a little comfort when I go in my reflection and meditation corner, and there I do some pranayam, some deep breathing, and then there is a soft color of the candle flame, which really gives me a little sense of peace and hope. Then I went again to think about, oh, maybe I should listen to the Gandhi's devotional songs, and I did, and it really helped me. And still, I was just so concerned and anxious and nervous. So I was thinking about, I did some introspection when I was in my meditation corner, and I'm saying how really I'm feeling when I'm living through this COVID-19. And some kind of imagination and a metaphor came to my mind. Oh, it is just like I am sailing my ship through a scary storm in a dark sea, in a very dark night. The ship keeps sailing through the most dangerous turbulence, and the sea is hardly I can see. Is there any end to this? There were winds, the tides, the darkness of the sea. My ship floated from waves to waves, tides to tide, and then I am experiencing my ship's nose stumbled through the remains of an old rock in the sea. And I imagined in my imagination, oh, perhaps these remains were left over by devastation caused by some kind of huge tsunami. Feels like just I'm drowning in the Bermuda Triangle. Well, my ship, as I am sailing, does stabilize a little bit. But then the huge waves come, and then it just stumbles again. And I keep sailing and sailing, and very frightening. Then, especially because there is no sight, there is no sight, and there is no shore in sight. But then I feel, well, I would keep sailing my ship, and I would keep sailing, and I will keep my candle of hope lighted. That's the end of my story.
Very nice, Diane. Very nice. So scary this time. Our next storyteller is Marcia Hackett. Just got her book. I haven't read it yet because I've been so busy, but I'm sure it's great. Marcia Hackett is one of our newest publishing club members. Marcia has lived in the village for 4 years, and she trained as a home economist educator. Marcia taught school briefly, then stopped to raise a family. When she became an empty nester, she returned to teaching and taught ESL at Santa Ana College for 17 years. She's a world traveler. She's visited 62 countries. She began writing her memoirs 10 years ago, and she self-published her first book this year in June, A Full Life, Still Going Strong. She will tell us the story about how that happened. And the name of her piece is Not Too Old to Keep Living. And you go, Marcia.
Thank you, Peggy. Each of you has a story to tell, insisted the writer, Ray Bradbury, to our congregation one Sunday morning more than 20 years ago. Now is the time to share your story with your family and friends. Don't wait. I had been asked to introduce the acclaimed novelist, screenwriter, and poet who had agreed to discuss his prodigious career. At the time, Bradbury's remarks didn't mean much to me, a middle-aged woman with an ordinary life, not much different than any other middle-class American. I felt that my stories weren't worth telling. Then on December 26, 2004, my life changed forever. My sister Penny and I were vacationing on the beach at the southern tip of Sri Lanka when we were washed ashore by the devastating tsunami that killed thousands of people. We managed to survive. The near-death experience is not the one I will relate here. It's what happened afterwards that's significant. I took a new look at my life, examining what was really important. I vowed to make each day count, to be proactive and live with intention and gratitude. It hasn't always been easy. I continued with activities that brought enjoyment into my life. Church committees, Toastmaster trainings to improve my speaking ability, docent touring at a local cultural museum, teaching English as a second language at the local community college, and playing tennis and bridge. I said no to volunteer requests that I considered a waste of my time. I've kept a quote on my desk from Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, quote, "Happiness is not a goal, it's a product of a life well lived," end quote. This statement has become my mantra. I started keeping a daily journal at bedtime. The writing, while providing closure to my day, became like a therapy session as I considered the various aspects of my life. I wasn't much of a writer. My training had been in home economics. then English as a second language. So I began taking college emeritus writing classes, some of which focused on memoirs. These courses made me realize that although most of my life had been pretty normal, I did have a few good stories worth sharing with my family, especially granddaughters who asked about, quote unquote, my olden days. Many of those events had affected us all and so were worth recording. Supportive instructors encouraged me to continue writing. In the memoir classes, students frequently read their work aloud, often breaking into tears with painful memories. Classmates laughed and cried with each other as we listened to recollections of family activities, work life, health issues, pets, finances, faith traditions, and especially turning points such as marriage, death, loss of a job, and retirement. So often we identified with each other's tales, remembering our own similar experiences. I wrote about these topics over a 10-year period and ultimately decided to compile them into my own book-length memoir. I found an editor and publisher for the project. My book's title is A Full Life, Still Going Strong. I'm excited the product is finally finished and was published in June 2020. I'm in my 80s now and fortunate to enjoy good health and have an active life in a retirement community. My book centers primarily on me, highlights a few major family stories, such as the 2 Summer Olympics in which my son played water polo, my divorce and the disastrous years of unemployment and financial insecurity that followed, my untimely departure from a job, serious health issues, thankfully since resolved, and finally my travels to more than 62 countries. The book was hard work, to say the least. It required countless hours of self-analysis, largely due to determine what stories should be included in the pages, followed by writing, rewriting, editing, and selecting photos. But the most important aspect of writing my book was realizing that while I may not be a celebrity or a millionaire, my life has been packed to the brim with experiences that deserve to be shared with friends and family members. By reflecting on my past, I'm able to live a better future. If you've ever considered writing about your life in any kind of format, I recommend getting started today. Don't worry if you're not a writer. It's getting the memories recorded that's important. Ray Bradbury was right in saying, we all have a story to tell. We do. Thank you.
Such good advice, Marcia, and very touching. Yeah, so for those of you who haven't written your book, you got to get on it, listen to Marcia, and it's a good book too. Our next author is Lorraine Gow. She wrote Black Women with Tamales. Lorraine Gow is I call her Yvette, actually. She's an indispensable part of our publishing club. She's always ready to lend a hand. And of course, she's a retired teacher, originally from Honduras. She authored Black Women with Tamales, a collection of short stories released this year. She has been featured in Lummox, and she has contributed her magic realism stories to Village Stories since 2015. Her in-progress works are a speculative dystopian fiction and a children's book. So, Lorraine, you should get together with Sue Ellen Zima, who's also writing a dystopian story. In fact, we're supposed to be doing it as a club, so all of us join. But anyway, I love Lorraine's magic realism. It's my favorite genre. So go, Lorraine.
Okay, well, these are poetry today. So I don't know how much magic, but I hope you get some out of it. The first one is entitled Chilean Sea Bass for Dinner. The whales are beckoning me this morning. Come with us, they say. Come with us. I grab my sweater, my floppy mariner's hat, and begin to run out the house when the phone rings and my husband wants breakfast. And the dog looks at me as if she has been misplaced. And the laptop says, you didn't answer your emails. And the whales say, come with us. But I misunderstood them. My arms became heavy and my legs bent and lifted me into the air where the neighborhood geese said, come fly with us, come fly. I lifted up my face to the sky, waved goodbye to the sunflowers and dahlias, but my arms did not become wings. My body did not gracefully leave Earth, and the sea bass lies frozen on the counter. And the dog looks at me as if she's been misrepresented. And my child says he must check his wages, savings, trust fund to take care of me when my mind is no longer mine. And the geese say, come fly with us. But I misunderstood them. I just adjusted my chair, undid my bra, laughed at my own silliness, and tell my husband, we will have an early dinner. And tell my son not to worry. And tell my dog, my misfortune is a sea bass recipe hidden in an old cookbook bought from a bookstore in Paris so long ago. My second poem, thank you. My second poem is called I'm Having a COVID-19 Day. People just want to run away, take a drive from South OC to LA, hop on the 405 to Malibu Beach, or watch the sunset from Mozambique. But I am cozy with my Italian club chair, planning my 1 p.m. breakfast. I'm in a COVID-19 state of mind. I've got a source for espresso decaf, enough cottonelle, don't laugh, to outlast my panic attacks, and plenty of Costco gas in case I tire of puzzles and Netflix and yoga and rolling out pizza dough, thick or thin, BritBox, or the man with whom I sleep. And when writer's block has a hole, where's my CBD? I'm in a COVID-19 state of mind. The end.
Sunshine, write a melody for that.
Yeah.
Really? See what I mean by magic realism? Yeah,
I love it.
very good, very good.
Thank you.
Our next author is Phil Silverman, and he's one of our greatest entertainers. And look at this.
Thank you.
These are just 4 of his books. I think he's done 2 more, right, Phil?
Yes. Oh, yes. And Cheryl was Lana Turner in the book.
Ah,
Thank you. All right.
Anyway, Phil is one of our founding members. He's been with the publishing club as long as I have. He's been with us through thick and thin. He emigrated to the village in 2009 from New Jersey. He's a Jersey boy, where among other jobs, he was a radio host. He's become a salient entertainer at our village. In addition to being a fine musician, he's a published author, having published 4 books of stories and personal memoirs, as well as anecdotes about well-known entertainers. So here's one of our favorite people, Phil Silverman.
Okay. True story. True story. Dr. Brenwasser, Union City, New Jersey, 1965. Great year. Well, I'm entering the chamber of Dr. Brenwasser, dentist for the Silverman family. I'm already sweating down to my socks. My t-shirt has stuck to my back. I've returned for another cavity treatment, and I know what's coming. Pain? No. Torture? Yeah, more like it. This man pulled a tooth for my father. No Novocaine. No Novocaine. He drilled on me many times, same deal. He would say, when it hurts, put up your hand, and I'll stop, temporarily. But Doc, the damage is done. I'm seeing stars. And not in a cool way, with a cool telescope in my science class. Part of the technique, parenthesis, to avoid the trouble and expense of using supplies, is to have a dental assistant in a tight, this is adult stuff, okay? In a tight, semi-diaphanous white dress, bend across the sink and say, shit, and look into my eyes. I guess they thought a kid, I shouldn't say that. I guess they thought a pubescent boy is less likely to write the dental board. She was a brunette, about 40. She would not swish her hips. She'd stand in one spot, I think unnecessarily cleaning various small trays and instruments. She'd stretch across the sink and then do the shh. Talk about the ultimate unfair trade-off. I shouldn't say that. They're a dime a dozen when you're 14. It was nice for 5 seconds until Dr. Death gets back in position and he sings, Maha. I remember that. There had to be some kind of erotic payoff for these two. I should have gone back when I was 18 and asked her out. Anyway, just before the high-speed drill from hell came down near my nerve, he'd hum to himself, Maha. It is repeated in my head for 55 years. That's why I've only learned 4 chords on guitar. He screwed me up. That big long white smock, her tight white dress. I'll skip that. That's too dirty. 119 years after the accidental discovery of ether, my remedy for blinding torture has to be, put your hand up. Pain is sexy? Was the nurse getting the vapors off a 14-year-old grimacing and grunting? Was he? Not that there's anything wrong with that. Or was it just torture the Jew? Dr. Brenwasser! Sorry. I remember those old folks at the time. Well, Hitler was crazy, but at least the trains ran on time. Then in the Then in the 1990s, a coworker says, you know, the Polish people should be mad at the Jews for riling up Hitler. I had enough of that anti-Jewish bullshit at school. I'm sitting in study hall at Woodrow Wilson Junior High School. A teacher walks up to me, hands me a piece of paper, says, bring this to, as I recall, the teacher's break room, to a female teacher. So I'm going up the stairwell, I look at the note. The note says, didn't mean to go over your head, but he's a Jew, and you know how they are. I was 13, I believe. Was there a hate Jewish cabal in Hudson County, New Jersey? A teacher dentist organization dedicated to Nazi traditions? Well, I don't really like injecting Nazi into my conversations because I know the history. I don't like to inject them as an adult, you know, unless it's necessary. But when I'm talking about Nazi style, I observe in people and today in right-wing politics. Ultimately, a messed up situation. The memory of that body stretching across that counter, always skewered by Maha. The thought of them getting off over me is too much. I'll just give you a little aftertaste. Any shrill, high-speed drill type sound today drives me up the freaking wall. I walk past a construction team and I hit the sky. I won't say I have PTSD. I know too many war veterans with that condition. And I had the high number in 1969. Thank you.
Oh, funny. Very funny. Geez, Phil, well, best to take those things with humor. Yeah. Our last is our greatest poem, The Master of Haiku, Scott Galasso. Unfortunately, I just have one of his books at home, but this man has published 17 books of poetry. In fact, well, I'll tell you a little about him. He's been our right-hand man for the Publishing Club. And like I said, he's about to publish his 17th book of poetry, including Mixed Bag, a travelogue in 4 forms. He is a master of Japanese-style poetry and edited Eclipse Moon, the 20th anniversary issue of the Southern California Study Group in 2017. But his latest book is freeform poetry. So without further ado, our great poet, Scott Galasso.
Thank you, Peggy. And it's good to see everybody. And I'm happy to join with you all and get a chance to read some poetry as part of the storytelling here. So I'm going to read some stuff from Rough Cut, which came out last year. This is haiku, senryu poetry, which is about people, usually 3 lines. But these are about people's relationships rather than just nature poetry. So I've decided to keep these light because I'm going to also read a poem about the coronavirus so that we have some balance. Okay, so this is the senryu. His t-shirt says, "Carpe diem." Loudly he snores. DNA test, the past we never talk about. The kiss, that's not a kiss. Flu season. In the limousine between two blondes, the heat of their hips. Blonde wearing a tan. Her tiny suit says, guess, I don't have to. Two pairs of eyes and two pairs of hands, speaking the unspoken. The time it takes to undo buttons, lovers and stitches. Okay. Oh yeah. Her tone of voice, 100 degrees in the shade. Child-proof cap. Only the 5-year-old can open it.
Oh,
Memorial Day. Her husband's name in granite. All that she can touch. Sidewalk Cafe. Her love life lousy. Now we all know. Shutters secure. What we have kindled begins to burn. Fishhook moon above the lake. She reels me in. And this poem ends with the end of the book, rough cut. One breath, the difference between I am and I was. Okay, so now I'm going to read one about COVID since it was our theme. This is a longer free-form poem. I did my time. I'll be able to get it within 8 minutes, all this stuff, but I'm going to just move on with it. The year we never saw coming. 2020. Its sound has symmetry, but infamy's mark will cling to its numeral like a cross on a hill. And those who endure will not forget this sight unseen, born in a world half away. It is not the corona surrounding sun, or a nimbus rounding saints' heads or gods. It is not the moon pregnant with promise. It's a stalker stealing breath without mercy, a killer floating on air. It's moisture staining a worker's hands, one love's poisonous kiss. What can be done with such viral fury, which respects neither wisdom nor age? And who will it cull today, tomorrow? This cleaver of parents from children, whose hands on glass cannot touch. And then I'm going to read a couple short pieces about the virus and then move on to a lighter subject. Saffron sunset, the metronome of ventilators. Via Dolorosa, the Good Samaritan in mask and gloves. This sidewalk too small for the both of us. COVID-19. Winter has come to this body of mine. First stent. Virus be damned. Rabbits acting like rabbits. Held high, a rainbow of fists. Past curfew, a cop and his son kneel together. Husband and wife, in all the same places, laugh lines. Curtains billow, a sea breeze caress on moonlit skin. Quarter moon, 5 visible planets, star jasmine. And then 2 poems about the upcoming fall, since we're very close to it. This is called October Trace. October Trace. With every falling leaf, more sky. Silence deepens as the carpet thickens, like north-side moss, or mushrooms clotting dappled trails and woods, boots muffled by acres of fading fire. Above the loam of black earth, below the sky, chevroned by southbound Canada geese. Only the squirrels are busy, burying their bounty of nuts amidst pine cones or spruce. And I bear witness to a year on the run as days crawl towards winter sleep. And the heart gives way to remembrance, and the hearth illuminates home. And this last piece I'm going to do is called Leaf Turning Time. First frost in pine tree shade. A sluggish stream of blue smoke winds towards sky. The rhythmic thud of axe on wood cleaves still, quiet air. I pause, watch our dog sniff mounds of gathered leaves as a squirrel eludes its probing nose, climbs the stacked cord of wood, escaping the curious canine. Then hands akimbo on the axe handle, I rest, rolling shoulders to unclench knots in my back as bunched biceps straighten their curl. And scanning the field, I spy the scarecrow wearing my old checkered shirt of blue-red flannel, straw hat perched on his head. Thirsty, I sip tepid coffee, then tip the silver flask, let its liquid fire traverse my throat, and without preamble, return to task. As pumpkins swell, salmon fill streams. Thank you.
Excellent, as always. Phil, your poetry is so excellent and touching. I love haiku.
Oh.
Alan, maybe, are you here? Do you have a poem for us?
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Can you see me?
Oh, great. She's our world famous poet, Alan, maybe.
Oh, thank you. This has been a great afternoon. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, this one's called 2016, the year the 20th century finally died.
Oh.
The year so many musicians died, and the year freedom seemed to be moving underground. Caskets filled the air. We live in times of turmoil, clocks speeding quicker and quicker. Middle age seems old. Seniors seem timeless. There's a lethargy in the way people move. There's a liturgy on the tip of our tongues. There's something in the morning cereal. It looks like newsprint. There's something in the evening news. It seems like farce. As though this couldn't be real. This over-the-top peek into tragedy's eyelid. This shiver that lives in our psyche like snow. We ski into another winter. The world is on a ski lift. Cocoa is leaving its space around the cup. We stir and it's January. We stir and it's the 20th century. We stir and it looks like it's black and white newsreels. History tries to repeat itself as a people in power like sequels. People wear the hero mask, the death mask, the face and the heart. People make choices. The stores sell everything. One of the strongest songs from Rodgers and Hammerstein, You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. Prejudging is the name of the game so many households play. Play Rummikub instead. Play solitaire. Don't be influenced by peers. 1 minute to midnight, but people don't know if the year will leave us dangling from some threshold. History said, look at me with your eyes of flame. Burn my pain in your memory. Walk into the libraries and kiss all the spines. The earth is spinning, whether people stay on it or not. What if earth falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it? The last person on earth will carry a pencil. That is why earth has survived this long. Thanks for having me.
Great piece.
Thank you.
That was, as always, Ellen. Ellen is so famous, she even has people who mimic her. Yeah. She's the vice president or president of the spoken word?
Oh, vice president, the spoken word.
Vice president.
It's funny, I mean, not funny, but I mean, I wrote that poem in December of 2016, and it just feels to have this timeless quality, you know? To write
You're
that.
absolutely right. Yep, it's right on point.
Wow. Thank
Yeah.
you. This has been such a nice gathering today. It's nice to see everyone. I'm glad we can interact through Zoom and stuff. That's great.
I know. I hope next year it'll be back to normal. But just a few words about me. I've published 2 books, La La Landia and Alfabeto Crossover Alphabet. As you can tell, probably, these are my illustrations. La La Landia are 8 mystical, magical stories, bilingual, and Alfabeto Crossover Alphabet is a crossover from English to Spanish or Spanish to English. So for example, A for angel, A, ángel. Anyway, enough on me. Did you guys know that if you add your birthday to your age, it'll add up to 2020? And that only happens this year. It's like very strange, so try it.
Wow.
Anyway, I hope next year we can once again have a delicious catered dinner and meet at a clubhouse. But meanwhile, I don't have words to say how good you are, you were, and how much I enjoyed this. And thank you so much, and thank you, Sunshine, for doing it for us.
And thank you, Peggy and Sunshine, especially for going above and beyond. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I
Thank
echo that. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sunshine.
Thank you. They were all very enjoyable.
Thank you.
For letting me join in. Thank you.
So I guess
It'll take
we'll
a-
say goodbye.
Bye.
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 Adios.
Enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Enjoy.
It'll take a little time for me to get that out, but I will get it out to you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thanks, Becky.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Au revoir. Adios.
Yours.